Hey guys, welcome to Slurve. It's Monday and I'm Steve Repsold, which means this must be Cash Game Cornerstones for MLB. Hope you guys had a great weekend and hope you've been coming by the Slurve chat to talk with us and get a little more in-depth insight on things and ask questions versus just what's in the videos. I hope you'll come on by tonight. We're having our first expert chat where Max, Adam, and I will all be hanging out in the Slurve chat, slurve.com. And answering all your questions from 5 to 6 p.m. today. Come on by and let's make some lineups. That being said, let's get on to some of the picks for today. There's some kind of weirdnesses with pitchers going on. We got some really too cheap guys. We got a pitcher on FanDuel go for like $3K, which is just silly. I mean, granted, he wasn't expected to start and blah, 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 blah. But bottom line, I mean, I'm not interested in this, not in cash anyway. I mean, there's arguments there for tournaments, but they're also getting a lot of attention. So I don't know how good a play that is. But in cash, I feel like we can completely ignore them. And there's only really two guys that I feel wonderful about today. And that's Kenta Maeda, who kind of let me down in my last recommendation of him, but it was a tougher matchup than against the Angels. He's 9.7 on DK and 8.8 on FanDuel. Reasonable on both sites. I really like him. And then Adam Conley, who also let me down in my last recommendation of him. That kind of goes to show you that there aren't great options out there today, but I feel pretty good about these two. Conley gets Philly this time around, which is a much better matchup for him than the Brewers were. Looking into it a little bit last night with Adam, the pitching guru. It seems that Conley is really more of a reverse splits guy. And he's a lefty, so that'd be interesting to see. I mean, really the only quote unquote scary hitters on the Phillies is really Ryan Howard, I guess. I mean, Michael Franco too, but bottom line, even if those two guys were scarier than they are, that's still only two batters to work around, and the rest of them really just aren't scary, and we just really don't have good options. He's 8.2 on DK, 8.3 on FanDuel. On FanDuel, I personally am leaning right now towards Kenta. 500 up to 8.8 is no big deal, and I think he's a safer play than Conley. And then if you absolutely must pay up above 10K for one or more of your pitchers, Zimmerman has been putting together some really nice performances, and he gets the Twins, who have not been very mighty offensively. 10.3 on DK, 10.1 on FanDuel. I mean, for me, that price is just like, no. I saw that price and just give you a not amused face to it. But if you really don't like either of the two options that I mentioned earlier, or you need a second pitcher for FanDuel, he is the one that I'd go to. But if it's me, I don't really see a reason to go beyond Kenta Maeda and Adam Conley. So I really like Arizona in general today, but the one caveat I have to that is that they are the team facing this 3K FanDuel, 4K DK pitcher, Chad Green, I want to say, but I could be wrong on his first name. And he is actually a pretty impressive looking prospect. I was doing a little bit of digging into it last night, and he's got some pretty impressive stuff going on from the minors. So I don't know how exactly he's going to face in his first start in the majors, but it is his first start, so I don't have a problem trying to pick on him. Maybe don't go all in on Arizona just because we don't know exactly how this is going to turn out, but also Arizona's a great stadium and all that, so there's other factors to that too, which leads me to my first recommendation, assuming he makes the lineup. He's been getting in and outfield as well as catcher lately. That's Chris Herman. 3.3 on DK's price is finally coming up there a bit, but that's still a price that I'm perfectly okay with paying. And 2.8 on FanDuel, same deal. Matt Shoemaker is pitching for the Angels today, and while he's probably not as bad as everyone loves to hate him for. He is bad. So Yasmani Grandal, who has been hot lately, been high in the dong finder, and been coming through with those home runs and big games. 3.4 on DK, 2.9 on FanDuel, just slightly pricier than Herman, who may or may not make the lineup. And then going back to that Arizona game, I do like Wellington Castillo too, even though it's righty on righty. Beef's got a lot of power to him, and Arizona's good for launching home runs. He too is 3.4 on DK, 3.0 on FanDuel, right all there in that same kind of range. I'd probably, I don't know, I think I like Grandal the best out of all of those three. And then there's one guy that's a FanDuel only play, and that's Victor Martinez against Barrios, who's just not been good so far. 3.5 on FanDuel, so he's kind of pricey there, but I was looking over his game logs, and man, Martinez has been really, really consistent. So if you've got the money there, I do not hate paying up for him. So pricing is still kind of separating out between the two sites. The prices are diverging. So I pretty much have two separate sets of recommendations for first base. On DK, I like Justin Bour a lot. Eichhoff has kind of been regressing a bit since his impressive starts a few weeks ago. Also, he's pretty good against righties, but he's just not against lefties. And Bour is one of the three kind of scary-ish lefties on Miami. I like him at 3.7 on DK. He's 3.4 on FanDuel. It's not like ridiculous, but I don't love his price as much there. I do also like Victor Martinez on DK for once, even though he's at first base there, which is a position I don't like to give up. But he's only 3.5, so nice, cheap. Like I said, over his last 15 games, I think he's maybe had 2 goose eggs in there, 1 goose egg, which is pretty consistent. I like him better, like that consistency better from a catcher than a first baseman, especially because we got guys like Eric Hosmer going up against Porcello, who's been good, but not that good. 3.9 on DK. He's also 3.9 on FanDuel. That's what I mean, just out of consideration there for me. And of course, V-Mart's not even there. So those 3 guys I like on DK a lot more than I like them on FanDuel. And on FanDuel, I like Ortiz. David Ortiz gets Yordano Ventura, who's been kind of struggling in his last few starts. And the Boston offense has just been so incredibly hot. I mean, if you stacked Boston like all last week, you probably made a lot of money. That they just, I mean, what did they score last week? Like 50, 60 runs? It was insane. I'm not even exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. It's crazy. So anyway, Ortiz is kind of a badass, as you might be aware. 4.3 on FanDuel is just too cheap for him. He's 5.3 on DK. That's a reasonable price. You can see sort of just the great disparity there. Another guy that's just overpriced, and I'll give you a little bit of a pass on this FanDuel because Arizona was expected to face Pineda, and instead is getting this guy making his first major league start. So I'll give you a semi-pass. Goldie is only 3.8 on FanDuel. I don't think Goldie should ever be below 4K. I mean, just in any situation ever. Someone on Twitter was saying, "Oh, it's a trap." To me, I don't think it's a trap. I think that's an excellent play on FanDuel in cash. But if you're one of the ones that wants to pick on Shoemaker, Adrian Gonzalez, who hasn't been doing that well so far this season, but still obviously a guy with big potential, 2.9 on FanDuel. That kind of gives you the three sort of tiers there. On the cheap end, we got Gonzalez, and then Goldie a little bit more expensive, and then right at the top we got Ortiz. I like all of them. It's kind of a matter of which position you want to spend up at today. Second base, on the other hand, I barely have any recommendations at all. Going back to lefties on Miami, Derek Dietrich is another one of the 3 lefties, Christian Yelich being the third. Talk about him a little bit later. 3.5 on DK, 3.3 on FanDuel. Less attractive price on FanDuel, but I really don't have a whole lot to recommend on FanDuel. The only guy that I really do like, and I like him on DK too, going back to Shoemaker, is Utley. 4.0 on DK. That's right on the edge of what I'm willing to pay for Utley. 3.2 on FanDuel is a great price. I'd rather pay 3.2 for Utley than 3.3 for Dietrich, that's for sure. And then a DK only play because Steve Pearce is listed in the outfield on FanDuel. He gets Hap, which is not a great matchup, but pretty good record BVP wise. The current Tampa Bay lineup has kind of owned him in general. Not that we should make all our decisions based on that, but he has good numbers otherwise for the day too. And he's only 3.1 on DK. I love that price. He's also first base eligible, but obviously no. I love that price there. Like I said, outfield on FanDuel, not interested. And that's really it. I don't have a whole lot for you at second base today, but I think those three guys offer plenty of options. Speaking of owning pitchers, we've got Josh Donaldson, who has just absolutely owned Smiley throughout his career. Really good record, over 20-some at-bats, so not like a tiny sample size. And I don't think Smiley is as good as the general consensus is, which I'm assuming is what's bringing Donaldson's price down to only 4.3 on FanDuel, 3.9 on DK. Reverse that. 4.3 on DK, 3.9 on FanDuel. Great value on both sites for just a great player in a ballpark that favors him. The only really tough part there is deciding between him and the guy on the opposite side of the field, and that is Longoria. Hap, kind of the same sort of, I think he's being a little bit overvalued in this matchup kind of thing, because Longoria is only 4.2 on DK, 3.5 on FanDuel. That's going to be a really hard decision for me. Longoria gets a big ballpark boost going to Toronto, which is a very friendly park for right-handed hitters. And that price is just great. So between those two is going to be tough. I also don't mind using third base as a spot to get some exposure to Arizona and the potential shelling of Green that will go on there today. But, like I said, we're not really sure what Green is, what he's going to bring to the mound. So there's a bit of risk in going with either Lamb or Drury. Both are third base eligible on DK. Only Lamb on FanDuel. Drury is an outfielder. Lamb 3.6 on DK, 3.0 on FanDuel. I like him better on FanDuel there. Whereas Drury 3.1 on DK, I like him there. But keep in mind that there is some risk there, and given the stellar first two options I mentioned, I don't think I'll be getting Arizona exposure there. I'd rather, at catcher or something. But they're not bad options, and Drury in particular, you might even want to play in the outfield on DK or on FanDuel, because he's been pretty good batting second, which I love for cash games early in the order. More at-bats, more chances to give us points. Not a lot of guys I like at shortstop either today. Corey Seager gets a billing almost every day in this show. He's been great. His price hasn't really come up, although it's started to a bit. Going up against Shoemaker, who we've mentioned already, has kind of struggled for kind of a long time, and I'm kind of being nice to him by saying that. 4.4 on DK, so like I said, his price is coming up there. Still 3.9 on FanDuel. Much more attractive price, but there's not a whole lot to go on at shortstop. I also like Eduardo Nunez, who's taking on Zimmerman. I think the Minnesota side of this game is actually kind of a sneaky way to go about things, but I don't mind Nunez in cash. He's been doing really well. He's been batting at the top of the order. He's been high in Dong Finder. Had a home run not too long ago. It's not all that common for him. 3.2 on DK, 3.0 on FanDuel. Definitely more prefer him on DK there. Whereas Marcus Semien gets Derek Holland, who's been giving up a lot of points to opposing hitters. He's 3.8 on DK, probably because he's been hitting a lot of dongs lately. he's one of those odd shortstops with more power than speed. And he does bat at the bottom of the order, usually 8th or 9th, which I do not love for cash. But he's only 2.4 on FanDuel. It's a really, really attractive price. 3.8 on DK. Really kind of out of my consideration at that price. Rather go down to Nunez or up to Seager. But that 2.4 on FanDuel is a really, really nice place to save a little money, I think. Back to the Tampa Bay-Toronto game for a minute. I like Brandon Geyer versus Happ again. 3.2 on DK, 3.0 on FanDuel. Much more attractive price on DK. He had the double dong yesterday, which I'll say 74 in Dong Finder. He was up there too. And, you know, I don't know if I expect that to consider, although he does get the ballpark boost too. He is a right-handed hitter going to Toronto. So I expect something out of him. I think he's a nice safe play, usually batting top of the order, first or second. So keep that in mind when lineup orders come out and check that out. Same story for Kevin Pillar against Smiley. Same deal with keep an eye on where Pillar is in the batting order, because he too moves around a bit sometimes, and sometimes it's more at the bottom end. I like him a whole lot more if he's at the top of the order. He too has been posting pretty high scores in Dong Finder, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's one in the pipe for him. 3.0 on DK, 3.1 on FanDuel. Excuse me. Like his price way better on DK. On FanDuel, that's kind of out of consideration for me, especially given some of the really cheap FanDuel plays that I'll give you in just a second. And then kind of on a more expensive play, a guy that's been tearing it up after killing me in my season-long league for the first 2 or 3 weeks of the year. Ian Desmond has finally found his stride. He has been hitting with some power, getting some dongs. He's also a fast guy, so it can get you some stolen bases. Lots of ways to get you those points, and better yet, to get you some upside. 4.0 on DK, like I say, we're paying up here. 3.6 on FanDuel. Pretty much equivalent pricing. These next guys I like a lot better on FanDuel. You'll see with their pricing. Jacoby Ellsbury gets Robbie Ray. This is not a particularly intimidating matchup, although I was looking at his stuff, and it's been a bit better this year. He is better versus lefties than versus righties, but both of them, you know, he's given up over a 300 WOBA this year, so I definitely don't hate the play. He's only 2.9 on FanDuel, 4.0 on DK. Rather go Desmond, but 2.9, great price for a guy who also has that stolen base upside, and he too is actually a guy that I really like from Dong Finder today. It's a little bit surprising to see that. So maybe he actually has one coming out too. Well, we'll have to see. Come back later for the daily Dong Finder video, and I'll look at that a little bit closer. I mentioned Yelich earlier, another lefty going up against Eichhoff. Eichhoff really struggles against lefties. 4.6 on DK. They're aware that Eichhoff really struggles against lefties. 3.7 on FanDuel, maybe not so much. Definitely like his price way better on FanDuel. On DK, that's really kind of too expensive for cash consideration, in my opinion. And then last, another just total bargain is Anthony Gose versus Berrios. 3.0 on DK. I don't hate him there at that price, but at 2.4 on FanDuel, he's really just being given away if there's money you need to save. And that rounds out my cornerstones for the day. But come on by the Slurve chat. We'll be there on and off throughout the day talking about stuff. And then at 5 p.m., we've got the expert chat where me, Adam, and Max will all be hanging out in the room, answering questions, and just giving you our best insights that we can. That's 5 to 6 p.m. today. Slurve.com. Free to sign up. Free to come chat with us and get your questions answered. Get some insights from the Dong Finder. And hopefully just have a good time. We're fun people. So come on by. Once again, I am Steve Repsold for Slurve. This has been Cash Game Cornerstones for Monday, May 16th. Good luck.